Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the Upper Tier Podcast. Bit of breaking news for you there. I thought I'd just jump on. Sean Dyche has been sacked as Burnley manager. Um, he was the longest serving manager in the Premier League, just short of a decade, I think, at Burnley. But before we get into his stats and stuff like that, not so much a good Friday for Sean, but a bad Friday. Let's quickly read the statement from Burnley Football Club. They can confirm the club is parted company with manager Sean Dyche, assistant manager Ian Wown, first team coach Steve Stone, and goalkeeping coach Billy Mercer. Looks like they will take over. Oh no, they've sorry, that's wrong. They have parted company with all those guys. Dyche was the longest serving manager in the Premier League, having been in charge of the Clarets for 9.5 years, nearly a decade, overseeing a period which will go down as one of the most successful in the club's history. During this time, the team was promoted twice from the Championship, achieved two top half Premier League finishes, and qualified for Europe for the first time in 51 years. Chairman Alan Pace said, firstly, we would like to place on record our sincere thanks to Sean and his staff for their achievements at the club over the last decade. During his time at Turf Moor, Sean has been a credit both on and off the pitch, respected by players, staff, supporters, and the wider football community. I think most of us will concur with that when we think of Burnley Football Club is Sean Dyche. However, results this season have been disappointing, and while this was an incredibly difficult decision, with 8 crucial games of the campaign remaining, we feel a change is needed to give the squad the best possible chance of retaining its Premier League status. Under 23s coach Mike Jackson, assisted by Academy Director Paul Jenkins, Under 23s goalkeeping coach Connor King, and club captain Ben Mee, have been asked to take charge of the team for Sunday's game with West Ham United. The process of replacing Sean has begun, and further announcements will be made to supporters in due course. That is the statement from Burnley Football Club. Real interesting. I mean, the timing of this is kind of weird. I mean, they got a huge win against Everton there last week, but then a bad loss against Norwich kind of dropped them back into it again. And I think when you look at the league table, I mean, I would assume Norwich and Watford are gone at this stage. I don't see them getting out of it. So literally, it's between Burnley and Everton. I think Leeds have done enough to move out of that situation now, albeit they were in it. But you're looking at Burnley there, 30 games played, 4 wins, 12, what is it, 4 wins, 12 draws, 14 losses, minus 19 goal difference, 24 points, which is a shocking season. Now, we don't expect Burnley necessarily to be achieving the dizzy heights of the Premier League top half and stuff like that, but they've been really poor this season. And anyone who's a follower of this podcast would remember throughout the whole of this season, we've been saying that Turf Moor isn't that place that it was where teams feared going there, and Burnley was able to pick up points there on results. This season they've been really, really poor. If you look at our remaining fixtures, obviously on Sunday, I think it is, they're playing West Ham, which would have been an opportunity maybe for them to pick up a point or possibly three, because West Ham's coming off a tough win last night against Leon. They certainly put in a shift, and we know that when these teams play Thursday night football, inevitably they come back into the Premier League that weekend and they potentially drop points. But if you look at the remaining fixtures, I mean, they had Wolves then, who we know are kind of a little bit rattly at the moment. Then they were away to Watford, which would have been a huge game. Then they're at home to Aston Villa, away to Spurs, and then at home to Newcastle the last day of the season. So you could see them picking up potentially 1, 4, 7, 8, maybe 8 points out of that. So the question is, would potentially 32 points be enough for Burnley to have stayed up pending on Everton? Now, we know Everton got a big win last week against United, but they had faltered against Burnley the previous game, which led them in real trouble. But they had reacted the right way against a very poor United side on the day. And Burnley, of course, lost to Norwich, which was a huge loss. So I'd say, looking at it, I mean, if you look at his record there, I mean, he's there literally a decade, 9.5 years. October, he would have been there a decade. Played 425 games, won 149, drew 118, lost 158, win percentage 35.1. So, I mean, if you look at what he's done for Burnley, on the face of it, it's not too bad. But this season has been really, really poor. And we also mentioned as well during the COVID seasons when there was no fans and stuff like that, it really favoured a lot of these teams in the bottom half, these smaller teams. They were able to go to the bigger stadiums where there was no fan base there. They were empty. And it was literally just play a game of ball. And this year, I think with the fans being back and everything else, and we've come out of COVID and stuff like that, I think that's where these smaller teams have struggled. They're going to grounds now, like you seen Burnley when they went to Liverpool, and the difference now they just get slapped up. So it's an intriguing situation. It's a weird call. What are the factors we're looking at there? Obviously, there's new owners, and it's only recently he signed a new deal, I think, till 2025. So it's a strange decision. Um, but I think it was vital that a change maybe came there, even though the timing of it is a bit strange. I probably would have let him see out the West Ham game and then made a decision based on that. Because what happens is now with making this change, I don't know whether Burnley have the player personnel there to give you that kind of, you know, new manager bump and stuff like that. And I think these guys, they would have been quite close to Sean as well. A lot of those boys have been there for a while now. I think the sale of Chris Wood, who would have been to a relegation contender at the time, Newcastle were down there struggling as well at the time, if you remember when that day went through in January. But they've since lifted themselves out and doing great stuff under Eddie Howe at the moment. But yeah, it's a real, the Norwich result, I think, may have triggered a lot of concern with the Burnley owners. And for Burnley, it's kind of vital that they stay in the division. Because we know going down into that championship, it's such a tough league to get back out of. So yeah, it's a weird one. It's kind of weird because when you think of Burnley, you think of Sean Dyche. You don't think of them as being a separate thing. And he was beloved at the club. There's no doubt about it. And for a number of years, under a minimal budget with minimal money to spend, he made them very competitive. Most teams, no one liked going to Turf Moor, and a lot of teams dropped points there. A lot of big teams went there and dropped points. They just played that style of play where it was like so difficult to play against with that block and stuff like that at Turf Moor. And I just think this season it came a little bit undone where they were trying to do the same thing, but just the defense didn't seem good enough this year to keep clean sheets. And what happens is if you're playing so defensively and you're not playing so as much attack, you're not going to be scoring a lot of goals. So if you give goals away, it's an uphill battle. And I think this year they just found it so difficult. I think if you look at their, 4 wins this season out of 30, would be a poor return even by Burnley standards. And it's the worst in the league as far as I know, because Watford have 6 and Norwich have 5. But certainly he's a character in the game, and he's a character who will be missed. So the question is, who comes in now? Have they made the call to Big Sam? Is Big Sam going to come in and try and lift them out of it? And then I wonder what Burnley fans will think if Big Sam comes in and does lift them out of it. Of course, they'd be delighted to stay in the division. But then what happens is because it's really between them and Everton. That's really where it lies, is between them and Everton, and there's a 4-point gap there at the moment. So they really have to win against West Ham on Sunday and hope that Everton slip up at the weekend. But that's it, yeah. A decade of management. Sean Dyche gone. Burnley now on the lookout for a new manager. Are they going to put an interim in till the end of the season? Are they going to try and appoint someone? Or are they looking at a situation where they're preparing themselves for life in the championship next season? I'm sure they'll fight right till the bitter end. And it wouldn't surprise me if they picked up a couple of results. But I don't know, maybe Lampard he might have after that big win against Man City. Everton might be able to put a win or two together. I know they have a tough run in. They have a lot of big games coming up, and that would have been an opportunity for Burnley as well. So I just wonder, have Burnley made the right decision at this stage? Did they really feel that they needed to change and that they weren't going to get what they wanted out of Sean Dyche in these remaining 8 games I think they have? But until next time, let us know your thoughts down in the comments. The Sean Dyche era at Burnley is over. We will talk to you again real soon.